So, it's 5:30 in the morning on a Monday. You wake up first thing in the morning, feeling energized, motivated. You've had your cup of coffee, you've had a great night's sleep, and you want to start your day with an early morning run. To start off with a healthy life choice, to continue on the motivation and be able to take on your day on the right foot. You put on your workout clothes, your favorite hoodie, your track pants, you lace up your shoes, you plug in your headphones into your iPhone, your smartphone, your iPod. You select your favorite music playlist, you put on your favorite podcast, maybe tune into an audiobook. You start to do your morning stretches, your morning routine. You open the door to start your jog, and it's pouring rain outside. In that moment, all motivation is gone. You realize that this slight change to the weather has completely drastically changed your the way you're going to start your morning altogether. What used to be a nice early morning jog, listening to your favorite podcast or audiobook or music album, getting your day started off healthy and strong, is now going to be an arduous task, trudging through the heavy rainfall, shivering with your muscles seizing up, and starting off your day with a challenge rather than a nice little comfortable start to your day. So you close the door, you unplug your headphones, you take off your hoodie, you crawl back into bed and decide, I'm going to get an extra hour of sleep. What changed in that moment? What you thought was going to be a nice way to start the day ended up becoming more of a challenge than you thought you were able to take on. You chose being comfortable over being uncomfortable. And today, I want to talk to you about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with my story. So let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me or aren't familiar with me, I am Skylar Scher. I am Pastor Jamie Scher's oldest son who lives in Buffalo, New York. And I'm over here today as a guest speaker for Pastor Jamie. And a little bit about me. Like I said before, I live in Buffalo, New York. I have a wife and 3 beautiful children, as well as a foster daughter who is a teenager from Nepal. I work for Hearts for the Homeless, which is a nonprofit organization where I am the outreach program manager. This is a job where I oversee the feeding programs, the outreach programs, the ministry programs that we offer through this nonprofit organization, including a food pantry, a mobile soup kitchen where we feed dozens of homeless people downtown 5 nights a week. And we also provide meals for multiple homeless shelters based out of Buffalo, New York, 7 days a week as well. On the ministry side of things, I'm involved with our church, the Buffalo Dream Center, where I lead a church of our own called Curbside Church, which is a church that is based downtown in the middle of downtown Buffalo, not based out of a building or a landmark or anything, just a group of people who gather every Sunday. We got a worship team. I share a 5-minute sermon. We bring food for people to be able to eat and enjoy, and we just fellowship with whoever is able to show up for that day. And because of the area and it's in downtown Buffalo, most of our congregation are people who are living on the streets in downtown Buffalo. They might have just gotten out of the homeless shelters for the night, and a lot of people who are experience a lot of trauma, drug addicts, prostitution, whatever they're doing downtown, like that church is for them so that they have a chance to be able to attend a church service. And I do that every Sunday at the same place. And I really like to think that this is my life. This is what I love to do. This is what God has called me to do. And I'm able to obey the calling of God every single day. But that's wasn't always the case. Like this wasn't always my life. In order to really start off telling my story, we need to go back a few years from today, back when I was living in Canada. Before all that, before I moved over and got involved in ministry, I lived an everyday normal life here in Nanticoke, Ontario. Worked a 9-to-5 job, like chilled out on the weekends, and that was basically it. Just lived a nice, comfortable, cushy lifestyle that I didn't think I'd want to trade for the world. However, I read online about a discipleship training school, which is a program run through YWAM, which is Youth with a Mission. And it just really stood out to me because it was offering a challenge. It said that you would be pushed beyond the boundaries of what you thought you were capable of and challenge your self-made limitations and force you out of your comfort zone. And I just really felt like that was a challenge to me. And so I took the time and spent a year and a half involved in ministry with YWAM. And during that time, I slept in bamboo huts, bathed in shark-infested seawater, ate fruit bats and coconut crabs, and built freshwater tanks out of natural resources, and was caught in a tropical storm in a small fishing boat. All crazy things I would have never would have thought, or situations I never would have thought I'd be thrown into, just living my everyday normal life, working in construction, and coming home at the end of the day, watching Netflix and going to sleep. And but most importantly, what happened while I was overseas was I was able to impact the lives of many people because of the grace of God and the impact of His message. And the truth is, after I experienced all of that, I went home and I couldn't live a normal life. I was no longer capable, or I was no longer comfortable with my previous comfort zones. After seeing how much I was capable of, I wanted more. And my ability to live an everyday, normal life was ruined because I knew what I was through God, what I was capable of. What is the comfort zone? The comfort zone is a situation in which you would feel comfortable in, and your ability and determination are not being tested. And it's really a natural human instinct to stay in your comfort zone. It's a survival instinct that we were born with, where if we have everything our natural body needs, which is food, shelter, protection, we wouldn't do anything naturally to jeopardize that. The reason why, you see it in other things as well, like the reason why domestic animals, when they escape from their pens at farms, they always return back to the farm, is because they know that food, shelter, and protection against predators is assured while they're over there. So rather than risk and jeopardize all of the assured protections and of the living on the farm, they'll return back to that so that their safety and their protection is assured. So it's our survival instinct that's pushing us to stay in our comfort zone. However, no good story ever involves a main protagonist staying in their comfort zone. What if Bilbo Baggins never left the Shire and the Hobbit trilogy was just a 3-hour-long trilogy of him sitting at home, working in his garden, smoking his pipe on top of his little hobbit hill, and it would just be probably the most boring trilogy of all times. What if Luke Skywalker stayed in the desert, his desert hut in Tatooine? What if Indiana Jones was just an everyday history professor in Massachusetts who never left the country? Pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is a difficult and arduous task because you're going against your very own human nature in order to do so. However, it is within our spiritual nature to leave our comfort zones. It says in Matthew 16:24, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me." When he says deny ourselves, he is telling us to go against our very own human nature, to take up his cross, his burden, his sacrifice, and follow in his footsteps. And when you think of the phrase taking up his cross, that doesn't exactly sound very comfortable. nails in your hands and feet, a crown of thorns on your head, a heavy cross carried on your shoulders. That's not the definition of comfort in any way. God's intentions were not to live in comfort 24/7, but is to constantly challenge ourselves to come out of that comfort zone. I try to challenge myself every single day, at least once during the ministry. And most of the time, this involves me walking up, or during curbside church or street ministry, or while I'm at work, walking up to somebody I would never imagine approaching naturally. And there's one time, for example, just to share a little story, where we were doing our curbside church. There was a guy at the very back of the row. People usually line up and they'll stand in line for the sermon. And there's a bunch of benches in the back where people usually sit. And he was sitting way at the back. So not really, he wasn't like part of the group, but he was like close enough where I could tell he was listening. And this was a huge dude, crazy hair, messy beard. And and I walked up and I approached him. He had face tattoos. And I introduced myself, armed with nothing but a smile and an empty hand, reaching out for a handshake. And he introduced himself and telling me that his nickname was Murder. And I looked, and he actually had the word murder tattooed right on his face. And he went, but during that conversation, it was very intimidating at first. Like normally outside of the ministry, if I was like at a grocery store or walking down the side of the road and I saw this huge, crazy looking guy with the word murder written on his face, I probably wouldn't feel the need to chat with him. In fact, I'd probably do my very best to avoid him. But because I reached out to him, because I empathized with him, and I approached him and talked to him like I would talk to a friend, he went from threatening and intimidating, hardly saying a word, to opening up about his entire life story and telling me, how his father was killed by a police officer when he was a teenager, how he was abused by his uncle who took him on afterwards, got involved in crime, spent a lot of time in prison, and has been kicked out of every homeless shelter and every soup kitchen in Buffalo, and has been living on the street because he keeps getting in fights with staff members and other homeless people. He's just made so many enemies that he's not welcome in any of the homeless shelters in all of Buffalo. Now, because God has given him a new life, and we ended that conversation with him dedicating his life to God. Every time I see him at curbside church, he greets me with a great big bear hug. He prefers we call him by his real name, which is Ronald. So nobody calls him Murder anymore. His name's Ronald. And this is someone I would have never spoken to. This is a person who I would have never been able to try to reach just from their physical appearance if I didn't step out of my comfort zone. And this has happened many times during our ministry. Some other examples include Screaming Jean, a drug addiction woman who was strung out every one of the curbside church sermons. She'd be screaming in the background. So we're always trying to share our message and preach over her screaming in the background. But because we always welcomed her, regardless of her showing up on drugs all the time, and regardless of how she dressed or how she appeared, she was able to realize and experience God's love in her heart, and it made her realize that she's more valuable than she thinks she really is. And the last time I spoke to her, she left her abusive boyfriend, and she's living in a woman's shelter to protect her from him, and she's been clean from drugs for 3 weeks. Because she realizes her life has value. She is worthy of God's love and our empathy, and deserves better than what she thinks she deserves. There was a man named Gerald who showed up to the Buffalo Dream Center because one of our teams during street ministry were able to pray for him and invite him to church when he was so drunk he was howling at the moon. He was a full-patched member of the biker gang called the Outlaws, and he showed up to every service and always ended every day rededicating his life to God and praying and crying at the altar call. One of the Sundays, he tore off every single patch he had on his vest, except for one that said, Jesus forgives, outlaws don't. And he tore the bottom part off, so all it says on his vest is Jesus forgives. He has since then passed away, but his final text to me, sent after the last time we spoke on the phone, is, I love to pray and talk to my Abba, which is Hebrew for Father. Jesus was a prime example of going out of our comfort zone. We know he was born into human form. He experienced pain, temptation, and the same human nature we are all born with today. And there probably, realistically, wasn't a day that went by where Jesus wasn't like, I wonder if I just stayed in Nazareth and became a carpenter. What if I was just a full-time carpenter and I just left all this ministry and everything off to the side and just lived the rest of my years in my human form just being a carpenter? It'd be so much easier. Instead, he did what many thought back then would be the unthinkable. He laid hands on people with leprosy, people who were not allowed to live anywhere near the city, who had to live in colonies outside the city and were quarantined from everybody else. And he would lay his physical hands on them and pray for them and heal them. He sat with criminals and tax collectors while openly criticizing those who were the church, which were the priests and rabbis of those times. He went into the temple and overturned tables and chased people out with a whip when most people avoided confrontation altogether. Jesus was truly the only man to be able to achieve the ability to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. My goal for myself and my challenge to you today is to push yourself out of your comfort zone, to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Reach out to somebody you normally wouldn't reach out to naturally. Sign up for a mission trip. Leave the comforts of your home for a week or two and help serve overseas. Get more involved in your local church. Spend more of your personal time in ministry. Or just do something crazy and radical. Make a dozen sandwiches with your family. Drive up to Hamilton and feed some of those in need on Barton Street. I'm sure at some point during the sermon or during some of my stories or the scripture that I'm sure each and every one of you might have thought of something, an idea of something God's been calling you to do for a while that you might have been putting off for a long time, or you've heard it for the first time and you're like, there's no way I'm going to do that. Now is your time. Step out of your comfort zone. Push your limits to the test, and remember, through God, all things are possible. It says in Matthew 19, verse 26, Jesus looked at them intently and said, humanly speaking, it is impossible, but with God, everything is possible. Let's just end in a word of prayer. Dear God, I just pray for anyone who's listening right now that you would speak to their hearts, that you would give them the strength and the courage to step out of their comfort zones, that you would put words on their hearts, that you would put people on their minds or mission trips that they've wanted to attend on their mind. And I pray that you would just give them the strength and the courage to step out of their comfort zones. God, your power is unlimited. Your potential and what you can use people for is unlimited. And I pray that anyone who's just been putting limitations on themselves would not do that, that they would remove those limitations and realize that through you, Jesus, all things are possible. That they would go out and they would reach the unreached, that they would approach people that they naturally wouldn't talk to and they'd build relationships, that they would show and be living examples of your love and your grace because they step out of their comfort zones, God. God, I pray that you would challenge people every single day to challenge themselves. And God, I pray that you would just speak to their hearts and that you would show and remind them that all things are possible through you. In your name, Jesus. Amen. Thank you, each and every one of you, for tuning and watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of the weekend. God bless, and hope to see you soon.